All right, welcome to part two. We're going to focus on verbal communication and mentoring relationships. Thank you, PSA coaches, for participating. Today, we're going to talk about a tool that you can use. The acronym we're going to use for when you communicate with your students is SOAR, SOAR actually, and we added the S. This is close to what we originally used, which was OR, and I'll explain to you why that was slightly changed. So the first S in SOAR, seek understanding. Never assume that you understand what is going on with your mentee. Always just ask questions. And we're going to get into different ways you can ask questions, different ways you can see clarity. But that one thing is don't make assumptions. Something may happen with your student, and we want you to have proper communication to be able to really find out what's going on and not take it upon yourself to try to figure that out or fix your student situations without really asking for more detail. So with the asking, we ask that you pose open-ended questions. These, for example, are questions that cannot be answered with a simple yes or no or one-word answer. These help your mentee to explore their feelings, events, and different courses of action. These are good, especially when you want to turn your mentee to expand on something or get more empowerment for them to come up with solutions. So you could ask them some examples of open-ended questions. Here's some examples. How do you feel about that? What have you tried in the past? What have you thought of doing? If you notice, most of these questions have the word you in it because you want them to be the one that's empowered to provide the answers to what they're looking for. So for example, a student may tell you something and it's in your mind obvious to you that they're extremely upset. So you could say, oh, I bet that made you mad, or I bet that you were so ticked off. Well, instead of assuming that they were mad or ticked off, you could say, well, what was that like for you? And in that way, you adopt a neutral position and you allow your mentee to consider and share their experience, not how you felt they should have felt or assumed they felt during the experience. So open-ended questions are also useful if the conversation has slowed down a bit and your mentee is having trouble expressing themselves. So being able to pose these questions allow them to kind of open up a little bit more and understand themselves, their values, some available choices and goals. Now, while you're posing open-ended questions, we ask that you actively listen. So truly pay attention, full mind, body, spirit, be present. Put your phone away. Don't be looking around and seeing who all else is coming in the building. Give them eye contact. Even when your body language, if you're at a desk, it's okay to lean in instead of sitting back. Let them know that you are fully there and give them just that presence that you are attentive to what they're saying. And you can also do that by asking clarifying questions along the way so that they really see that you are truly listening. When you listen to understand, you're not rehearsing what you're going to say in the next second or waiting to jump in. So active listening doesn't mean that you're listening to have a response to what they're saying. It's you're listening to really understand what they're saying. Especially if your mentee is having a moment where there's a lot of emotions or a conflict, your goal is to help them understand that emotion, not to control it, not to diffuse it, but just to help them to see where they are and to help them be mindful. Also, along with active listening, we want you to practice reflective listening. And reflective listening is when you paraphrase what you think your mentee has said, and then you check with them to make sure you've understood correctly. Now, reflective listening will give you the opportunity to make sure that you've correctly understood your mentee. And it also lets your mentee know that it's important to you that they are heard and understood. Some examples of reflective listening can be, okay, so it sounds like, or it seems as if, what I hear you saying is, it feels as though, and one of my favorites is, okay, help me to understand. On one hand, you, and on the other hand. That's especially important when you have someone who may say, it almost seems like they're contradicting themselves. I want to get a good grade in this class, and then they're in the same breath saying how, they don't want to go to class because it's cold outside. You don't want to be mean and be like, well, that doesn't even make sense because that's rude. You're making a judgment because they really do want to do good in class, but they also don't want to go outside. So you can use it, okay, well, help me understand. And that way, it's not like you're judging them. You're really trying to get clarity on which one of those they consider more important or what they're willing to do. So it sounds as if I hear you saying things of that nature. The last one is summarizing. So summarizing is when you are wrapping up. Well, it can be used when your mentee either is getting kind of off track during your meetings on topics that are kind of going away from the point of your meeting, which is to help them have skills and strategies for success. This also can transition you back to maybe a topic that you saw from their wellness forum that they might need to address, or something they brought up in a previous meeting that kind of was left open and you want to revisit that for their sake, or you knew it was important to them at the last time, you kind of want to pick that up. Summarizing is also a good way to kind of put the whole meeting in a bundle right before you leave and be able to say, for example, okay, so we've had this time together, and what I heard you say was so-and-so. We also talked about such and such, and during this time, you decided to book an advising appointment for learning strategies. At our next meeting, you can come and bring ideas about what worked well for you with that meeting and what you can use. We're also going to talk about building a course syllabus, so you might want to bring things with that. So that summary can kind of take what you talked about at that meeting, maybe even blend it in with something that happened at a previous meeting, some steps they've decided to take, because once again, it's about them and not us, and then give them kind of even a foreshadowing of what you may be talking about next week, or something that you can add to it for next week. All right, short and sweet. So our 3-step process with this, and remember, this is just a recap of the full training. So step 1, thank you for watching the video. Please leave a comment, and the comment today or the prompt will be posted under the video. Step 2, please apply the information to yourself and teach the information to your mentee. So your mentee should be able to clearly see that you are using reflective listening, asking open-ended questions, that you are summarizing things that they're saying, that you're seeking understanding. And then you can encourage them and teach them to do some of those similar things as they have interactions with people. Last step 3, review and implement as needed. And thank you. Stay tuned as I summarize for part 3.